The use of color within an animated film or series is one of the essential aspects of mise-en-scène that tells the audience everything that they need to know about a scene or character without saying it outright. As for animation, we learn within the first semester of film classes that the traditional frame rate is 24 frames per second. But what happens when one experiments outside of that norm? Today we are going to look into Rooster Teeth's new animated series, Genlock, and see how they use color and different frame rates to tell the story to the audience visually. For those who want to watch the series but haven't yet, there will be spoilers ahead. Genlock is an animated series that starts in the year 2068 where we meet our protagonist, Julian Chase. Julian is a pilot for the Polities military known as the Vanguard, and when he is called to go to New York after being notified that enemy forces were attacking, he knows that the only way he can give people their best chance was to sacrifice himself. 4 years later, everyone thinks Julian is dead, and we see what happens to his love interest Miranda, as well as meet two new characters named Madrani and Dr. Weller. It isn't until Miranda is on a mission to rescue refugees that we discover that Dr. Weller and Madrani are part of a new program called Genlock, and finds that Julian is alive. As the series goes on, we meet the recruits of the program, understand why they're unique, and some of the particular abilities that they can do within the program. So I'm guessing at this point you might be looking at some of these clips and be slightly confused as to why the animation is not as smooth and clean as it traditionally should be within the 24 frames per second. Don't worry, I didn't change the frame rate to make them look cool. The creators were experimenting with this for they didn't want the show to feel real. Gray Haddock, the writer and director of Genlock, explains it a little bit further.
You're going to witness the show having different frame rates within that 24 frame per second standard. I think it puts you in a place where you're getting less hung up on a realistic, perfect, and crisp presentation of reality, and instead it's more about having a little bit of blur and flicker that it makes it feel more dreamlike.
Based on this, I can say that they were able to achieve the look and feel of the animation that they were hoping for, and after a while, one can barely notice a difference. But does it work all the time? Well, it depends on the scene. For myself, the different frame rates worked well in the battle sequences and when we meet the villain. It made it appear to be realistic to how someone might see horrifying moments or events that would make things seem blurry or out of place. Not only does it give us a feeling of uneasiness, but it also helps us understand what the characters might be experiencing within that given moment. Of course, some of the calmer moments should have stayed within the traditional frame rate to provide those scenes with a similar realistic effect. So again, it depends on the moment and whether those different frame rates give it the impact that the creators wanted it to have. Now let's move on to the colors that were present throughout the series. The colors were mainly focused on the background and the costumes of the characters to help establish the time of day, relationships, importance of the characters, and emotions within a scene. Depending on what is happening within that scene, the intensity of the colors will vary, but will also show the audience what they will need to know without explicitly saying it. A great example of this is the Battle of New York and the attack at the military base. At the beginning, the colors are bright, but as the struggle continues and gets more intense, the color palette gets darker and has a red tint to it with a bit of purple, also to indicate that it is around sunset. So not only does it provide a feeling of danger and intensity, but also established the time of day. Another great example is the colors for the costumes of the characters. We see the Genlock team's color palette and notice how bright it was against the other characters, who have a camouflage color palette. The Genlock suits are all neon colors, which helps them stand out and establish that they are the primary focus of the series, whereas the Vanguard blends into the background and with each other. At the beginning of the series, however, the military's color palette had a different purpose. At some point within the very first episode, we see Julian and Miranda are wearing their military uniforms and that they have a similar color palette even though their costumes are of different styles. This helps establish how close Miranda and Julian are within their relationship, and when we see them again later, when Julian and Miranda are in their battle uniforms, Julian has a different color palette, showing that even though they're connected, their point of view of the battle and branch of the military are also different. In conclusion, Genlock is a unique animated series that explores outside the traditional frame rate of 24 frames per second to pull it away from reality and bring it closer to fantasy, as well as see the creators' use of the characters' color palette and what it can tell us about the characters without having to say it to the audience.